Hi, everyone. I want to talk to you today about how to build a family culture of faith. What are the practices that build a family culture of faith? When I was dating my husband, they had quite a culture of faith in their family. Everyone had gone to a Bible Memory Association. They had all learned hundreds of verses, memorized them, and they had this game at supper where they had this piece of bread they called the bread of life, which was just a holder for about 60 verses. And they would pull out a random verse and say the reference, and then whichever kid could say the verse first won. Which was all wonderful, except I hadn't been raised that way, and I found it very intimidating. And maybe some of the ways you've thought or been told you should be having faith talks with your children, like family devotions, may seem a little intimidating like that to you as well. And I confess the Bell family was never great at that approach to faith building in our own children. But we did have other practices, and I think that they built our culture in very unique ways. They actually coincided with Deuteronomy 6. When talk about my commandments, it says, when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. In other words, make faith a part of the way you normally talk, the way you actually just exchange things. Because when you do that, you take God out of the Bible and you make him a part of your everyday life. And so we had certain tools or certain practices that I'm going to share with you today that I think really did help our sons when they were growing up to be able to talk about spiritual things. The first thing was the God hunt. We believe that what's learned with pleasure is learned full measure. So there was a measure of delight in this, as if you were going on a scavenger hunt. You know, who at the end of the day had a God hunt that they could share with the family? And so there are 4 categories to look out for when you are doing a God hunt. The first category is any obvious answer to prayer. It's my theory that God loves to answer the prayers of children with fireworks. And so I think of the first year, the first Christmas that we had, Christmas after my parents died, we actually did end up with a pair of sisters who weren't able to go back to Peru where their parents were missionaries. That Christmas, we ended up on the couch all crying together. We were all homesick in different ways. And I remember praying, oh God, help us to get over this and have some kind of decent Christmas. I had no way of knowing that God had planned for Faith and Sharon to actually be a part of our family. They would live with us on and off for 8 years. And, 20 years later, they're some of the closest friends we have. That's what I mean when I say God answers prayers with fireworks. He didn't just make that Christmas tolerable. He built a great friendship out of that experience for all of us. So any obvious answer to prayer, when that happens, don't just slide by it. Write it down in a book. Call it God's story and tell your children this is God's activity in your life. The second thing is any unusual linkage or timing. Maybe you've had this kind of experience where, you needed money, you were short, and unexpectedly, a refund check comes in the mail for just the amount of money you need. We have had that happen. Unusual, when you need something, bang, all of a sudden it's there. Don't say coincidence. Say that's God. And then the third category is any help to accomplish a ministry task. When our older son was in 5th grade, he and his friend became very concerned about the state of Africa, and they decided they wanted to make Africa rich, which, any adult knows is laughable, right? Except at World Relief, when Brendan went there with Rich, his friend, World Relief said, that's a very interesting thought that you kids want to help like that. They gave them lucite boxes that they took to stores all over town. Brendan and Rich organized all their friends into this bicycle group, and they would go and collect this money all summer. Do you know, at the end of the summer, they had raised $7,000 to help make Africa rich. And even World Relief was pretty impressed by that. That's God's help. And then the last category is any evidence of God's care. You almost are in an accident. Something almost happens, but God is protecting you. He is looking out for you. So I'm just giving this story from our time as a family when the kids were young. I was taking my niece back to the Miami airport, and I was in a residential area that was quite poor, and but there was a large street that went through. As I'm driving through, all of a sudden a puppy jumps out from behind a parked car, and I have no way of avoiding this puppy. I hit it. I pull up, I'm heartsick, my niece is crying. I get out of the car, and as I start to go over to the puppy, a white Cadillac with fins, one of those old ones, pulls up, and a guy gets out who looks like a blonde Elvis, you know, the bouffant hair and the t-shirt and the tattoos, and he says to me, you need to go now. These people don't know how to take care of their animals, and they could be quite angry at you. I will take care of the puppy. And so I did what he said. I got in the car and I drove away. And as I drove away, I thought, I wonder if that was my angel. Leave it to me to have an angel that looks like a blonde Elvis. But it was not something I thought of as coincidence. I thought of it as God's care. God. When we have those kinds of sightings, and let me say them to you one more time, any obvious answer to prayer, any unusual linkage or timing, any help to accomplish a ministry task, any unexpected evidence of God's care, we would say, I spy God. And then I think every family needs to have a faith statement that characterizes them. Something that if you had a family crest, you would put on that family crest. For our family, it is God is in the messes. And we would remind ourselves of that God is most creatively working on our behalf when we can't help ourselves, when we are in a really tough situation. God is working on our behalf. And so I remember that Bren, when he was in first grade, we called him Angel Baby. He was a head shorter, a little blonde guy, quiet, and he got in trouble at school with a substitute teacher who didn't know he was Angel Baby and looked over and saw the boys messing around, sent them all down to the principal's office. Bren came home in tears that day, and I said, don't worry, Bren, I will call the principal, and Mommy will fix it. And so I called the principal, and she really was not impressed that I was calling her. She said, listen, I will see your son in my office for the rest of the week every day. And so the only thing I had left was to pray. And I remember praying, God, help us to remember that even Jesus was falsely accused, right? I sent him off the next day to school. I cried all day. This was my first child, the first situation I couldn't handle for him. And I waited for him to come home from school, but he came home and he wasn't sad. He was really happy. And I said to him, did you have to go to the principal's today? And he said, oh, yeah. And I said, well, what happened? He said, well, you know that little girl in third grade that I have a crush on? She came in and she talked to me. And I said, well, what did that amazing little girl say to you that made it all better? And he said, Mom, she said, what's your name? And I was so shy I couldn't even talk to her. My friend had to tell her my name. And then she said, what did you do to get in trouble? And my friend had to tell her what we had done to get in trouble. And then she looked right at me and she said, you are so cute. Mom, I had a great day in the principal's office. Yeah, God is in the messes. And so I'm recommending you try the God Hunt to increase your family faith culture. Also to be able to believe with your children that God is in the messes. Never, never, never be afraid to pray with your child for fear that God won't show up, because God is in the messes and is creatively working out the solutions for our benefit. So that's it from our family culture, the Bells. Thanks.
Hey, well, I hope you enjoyed that last episode of Parenting in Coronaville. And I did get a lot out of this session also. And just a couple of reminders. I hope that you got this too. I loved when she talks about I spy God. I think that's really good to help kids to remember and to help them to understand and see some of the things that happen, to see and know that those are God moments. That God is in that. Those things that she said, answer to a prayer, unexpected linkage or timing, any help or accomplish a ministry task when those things just happen. That's not coincidence, that's God. And any evidence of God's care. So those are wonderful, wonderful things. And you can help your kids out by making them known, help the kids understand and see those God moments. Because our world wants to tell us that it was just a coincidence. But we know that it's not a coincidence, that God is in control of everything and He is the one who's taking care of that. And also, she talked about praying with our kids. I think that is a great reminder that we should do is pray with our kiddos. Well, I hope you enjoyed these parenting in Coronaville videos. I know I did, and I hope to see you all soon. Bye.